Good morning, everyone. We're going to start the Act 378 Subcommittee of the Developmental Disabilities Council. We will do, we have to do roll call, or you have to? Okay,
I got it.
Brenton's going to do roll call.
All right, Ms. Banks,
Present.
Ms. Bazile, Ms. Hagan.
Here.
Dr. McKee. Ms. Palazola,
Here.
Ms. Stewart,
Here.
Ms. Tarver,
Here.
Mr. Taylor. 5, and you do have a quorum.
Okay.
Fair.
You don't need to do anything else?
So just, I'm sorry, I thought I took that off. Just a few ground rules to keep in mind before we get the meeting started. So members and public, make sure you're recognized by the chair before speaking. All this is also posted on the board over here. Make sure you silence, turn off your cell phones. No alphabets, so that means please don't use abbreviations. At least let folks know what you're talking about before you start using abbreviations. Except as necessary, please restrict your use of your phones and tablets and things at the table unless it's necessary for the meeting. We're going to discuss everything in a responsible manner. This meeting is short enough. We don't have any breaks here, but please be respectful of each other's opinions. And the big one, keep side conversations to a minimum. One thing you need to keep in mind is this little system here picks up everything. So every shuffle of paper, every little whisper, it's not a whisper. They hear it very clearly. So please make sure that you take that into consideration. And that being said, I think that's everything, but I do need to shuffle this around. That's not where it needs to be.
Okay, thank you, Brenton. So in your packet and posted online in the minutes from the July meeting, we need to have an approval.
Bambi, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Mary Torber.
A second.
We have a second from Nicole Banks. Any discussion? Any public comment? Any objections? Any abstentions? Moved. Okay, next item on the agenda is our reports from the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. Tanya Murphy will be giving those reports.
Don't tell anybody.
We
weren't prepared.
To you.
This has to move. Okay, resume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, so I've got several reports to talk about today, and I'll just start with the fiscal year 23, which is last fiscal year's final total expenditures for the Act 378, which is for OCDD, that's Individual Family Support and Flexible Family Fund. So whenever we're giving the reports for each quarter, we always started out by saying, but this isn't the total amount for the quarter because the report's coming in a month earlier. But this report is 100% accurate. It has all of the expenditures for last fiscal year. So we don't have to have any sidebar on, but by the way, this really isn't the percentage for real because another month has to be, this is for real. So I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that every single LGE, with the exception of Northeast Delta, spent 98% or higher of all of the funds that they allocated towards the Individual and Family Support Program. Northeast Delta has 93%. And so when I was up in Monroe, we did talk about this 93%. And what they indicated was that there was $70,000 left over, but they had actually obligated $59,000 of that money to families, but the families just didn't spend it. If they would have spent it, then they would have, spent 99% of their budget. So Northeast Delta said that they're gonna work more closely with families to make sure that they spend the funds that are in their agreements to spend. And if they don't spend by Q3, then they'll pull some of those funds from those families and spend it on others so that they don't have this amount of money left over at the end. And also I wanted to, just because we're talking about Northeast Delta and the fact that they spent only 93%, if you go to the next report, which is the Act 73, and you look at Northeast Delta, they did actually spend 135% of the 9% that they're required to. So they went above and beyond what we will ask them to spend. They just didn't spend everything that they put towards the IFS budget. Any questions about individual and family support and the total expenditures? I'll move on to flexible family fund. And that's 99 to 100% for everybody that the money they collected for it, they spent it. And then the Act 73 report for the total expenditures for last fiscal year. Everybody spent. I mean, the lowest was 98%. But a lot of the LGB spent above. So if you look at the statewide total, it was 108%. So do we have any questions about fiscal year 23 final?
I just have a comment. I spoke with the, I guess is the finance person at one of the LGEs, and an interesting thing about the requirement for the 9% that I don't think it's gonna change our position on it. But for instance, every year state budgets, the state agencies will get a percentage increase because employees get a percentage increase. So what is it, like 4%, 6%, 8%, whatever that amount is. So that means everybody in their organization will get that raise and they get the allocated amount to cover all of that. But because of this law, they have to take 9% of that and put it towards DD. So that 9% they have to take from that extra money they're getting that's specifically for all the employee salaries, they have to make it up from pulling from money that they already had, because they have to cover that increase in salaries that's required, if that makes sense. I know it's a little bit of complicated thing. So like the thing was that it was, you know, sometimes it's a struggle, you know, they have to move that money over. But like I said, I think our position is that we want you know, for the DD population to get the 9%, but I just think it's good to have that understanding of what the process is and what the LGs have to do in order to, you know, to meet this obligation that we have in law.
And that I'm sorry, just LG for somebody that's new.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
LGE, the local governing entities, that's another name for the human service districts and authorities in each region. So all of these, you know, our 10 regional offices. Thank you for asking that question.
No problem.
Okay, that's it. Or is there any questions or comments about that? Because I fired back really quickly, like, what do you mean there's a problem with it? And then they explained it. Okay, thank you, Tina.
So should we talk about the breakdown of last fiscal year information? What order do you want me to give these reports?
Yeah, that's the order that is on the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah, the IMS request. Yeah.
okay, that's what we're gonna make them. Okay, so each year at the end of the fiscal year, I run these reports from our participant services database so that the DP Council can get an idea of how many requests for individual and family support each local governing entity receives, and kind of how the decisions are broken down how many are fully funded, how many partly funded. Total number of agreements, that's just the word that they use. That's sort of like a contract when they provide a service to a family. A lot of information to go over. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to look at it in advance and had any questions that you had, that anything that popped out while you had an opportunity to review, or if you want to have time to review, you can go back.
Okay, so the fully funded, the request fully funded and the fully funded agreements, shouldn't that line up with each other? Because if it's a fully funded request, then the agreement should come with it, right?
Not
So,
always.
okay,
And I understand your question, and that makes sense that you have that question, because an agreement is a contract that they do with a family to provide a service.
right,
But sometimes they have what they call crisis, where they have like a bucket of money that's with an agency, and that agency just cuts checks directly to something, and that's not really an agreement. They don't have to do an agreement with that. They just cut the check. So it wouldn't actually line up.
oh, okay. It's good to know the process.
Yeah. Like, I think that all of the agreements are included in the fully funded, but not all of the checks that they cut for the crisis fund are. in.
Right,
So
because
there's
it's a
more
big
of the
discrepancy in all of them,
fully
right? Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
So, and then the next report breaks it down even more specifically to talk about what items were purchased. How many contracts or agreements were done for PCA, transportation, just all of the different various items that people might ask for. And it's the first two pages, the first page lists all 10 of the local governing entities, and then on the next page, it has statewide total for each service.
So it doesn't have the percentages like it did in the other report. As far as the encumbered and the money spent, it doesn't have the percentages. Like the other reports
No,
you can
this
see.
doesn't have percentages, actual numbers,
Okay,
the actual amounts.
so you would just do the math.
Yeah, so I have some questions, and I think these are some of the questions that we've had previously, and what I did was kind of look and see which areas for each region had a pretty large amount percentage-wise of funds. So like for Metropolitan, PCAs is about half of their budget. So like, why are they spending that much? Also for MCAL, for instance, they have for undergoing continent supplies, that's about 40% of their budget, and PCAs are about, I don't know, 25% of their budget, and then they don't have any vocational, not much for vocational supports. But then you have other regions like South Central, Acadiana, Central Louisiana, and Florida parishes. No, I'm sorry, not Central Louisiana. Actually, that's the opposite. Let's see, South Central, Acadiana, and Florida parishes all have a large percentage of their budget going to vocational and employment supports. And then you have like MCAL and Central Louisiana that have basically nothing. And so what I know that people are pretty much the same around the state. There's some disparity, but that's like big disparities. So,
I mean, my first guess would be that Imperial South issue doesn't have like a vocational maybe open yet for them to spend money on because of the all the devastation that happened in the Region 5 area.
The rehabilitation and the vocational providers in Lake Charles, most of them have still not come back.
We're having to look at a lot of different things. They actually still have a lot of people who haven't come back either, or having to receive services kind of across the line in Region 4. Which we give permission to be able to do that because just primarily because of staffing, some still because of physical structures, but MCAL right now still doesn't, like their local governing entity still doesn't have a physical location. They're having to rebuild. So even though it seems like, well, those hurricanes were a long time ago, there's still pretty substantial rebuilding there. So yes, the number of day program and vocational services that they had before Laura?
Was it Laura?
Laura, yeah.
Mhm.
They haven't rebounded even yet. So that's that for them, in terms of vocational, that's why, but you mentioned another one.
Central Louisiana Human Service District, I don't know. I circled it. I'll have to ask him. I don't know.
Well, and this is what, but they have a very high amount for PCAs. So my question is, I guess I have around the vocational and employment supports. I know that that's needed in some cases, but if they're day programs, that's not necessarily integrated employment. And so while that might be something that someone needs, sporadically or for a period of time, I have concerns about these regions that have this really high percentage of that. Are they just keeping people in day programs all the time and they're not even looking at some type of integrated program? And then if you look at Central Louisiana, I'm wondering, are they not even thinking as much as even having a day program, that people are just staying in their homes with this large amount and not even getting out even to some segregated, environment? And so those are my concerns. I don't know if this is the actual, what's actually happening, but those were my concerns in regards to that.
And just looking at some of these numbers, like just zero is, if you go through with a highlighter, is always like a stark, like nothing. So someone in that parish, there is nobody that requested a service in certain care, like. So for diagnostic evaluation and counseling in MHSD, on your second page on the back, there's like nothing there.
But that's not, most of them don't have anything for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, some of them, some of the categories. Are we getting the word out there of what you can use the waiver maybe for? Too, is that maybe one of the issues is that the medical resource, or like what I'm saying is like, whoever the support coordinators, do they know all these categories that are available? It's not just personal care. Or is the problem you have to use all your personal care first because you're only allocated that amount of money? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if this is showing us a problem.
Well, typically when the community support professional meets with the family, we really try hard not to go in there with a menu of services that we provide in this program. We just go and talk to the family and say, what's your challenges? What's your barriers? What's your goals? What do you want to see happen? And then, well, maybe PCA would help you reach that goal, or maybe a vocational program would help you meet that goal, as opposed to going in there and saying, these are all the services you can get. The community support professional goes in and says, what do you need?
Okay, so
and
what's
we try to
okay.
meet that? So
what's not, okay, got it. Yeah.
But what if they're not aware of what they need?
well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, like, how do they know what to ask for if they don't know what's available?
I'm just,
And it's a fine line. Because we don't want to tell people we're going to give you PCA because we think that's what will fix your problem. We want to kind of assess what the situation is with the family, and then what are your goals, and then talk about what are all the things that maybe we could do to help you reach that goal. So it's a fine line between, I know what you mean, like,
Right, because
give them a whole list of what we can do, because there's no way to tell you everything we can do. We don't want to put you in a box and say, these are the only things you can ask for, because we can do a ton. That's why there's the other category, because we will think way outside the box and buy things for people that don't even fit in this list. And we don't want to limit people to this list. this is just, we have these specific categories listed out because they're more often than not asked for, so that we can let you guys know what's paid for. But we don't want to go in and tell people, this is all you can get. You know, we want to leave it open, wide open to them, telling us what they need.
I'm in the central Louisiana area, and I don't know, like, what would this, for vocational employment supports, do we even have the resources, if somebody needed it, what would that equal? If I said, oh, I need it, is it available, I guess, in my area? And sometimes we don't have every resource. I mean, you can offer all kinds of things, but we might not have that resource. So what would that resource look like? Do you know? Like,
I would recommend maybe if somebody wanted to get a job and we didn't have like a supported employment situation, then you could maybe do PCA, just have somebody help them go look for work, fill out an application. It wouldn't necessarily have to be titled vocational. It could just be a PCA person that would just go with the person to help them find a job in the community.
but I just wonder if maybe our area might need some education about what that might look like. I don't know.
About what a vocational would look like.
Right, like, I could come in and not. Sometimes in the community, you know, oh, I've heard other people have gone here and they've gotten employment. If you don't hear it, don't know about it.
Right.
And then the staff is not sure if we, I wonder if you know, how often we used it in our area. That they may not think about it or know what the resources are. It's kind of like, if you know you can go to the ARC, you're going to go to the ARC. But if you don't know the ARC resources there.
But don't you have to use LRS services first? And these services are really for like after LRS finishes.
Mhm.
And so this would be like after a provider is working, I'm not sure, I'm asking. That you would use these services for like follow along and stuff like that. So it's something where you would already be in the system working and have already really gotten a job, I think.
In certain situations, you bet, you know, we definitely refer people to LRS to utilize those services.
But it's my understanding that a lot of this funding is going to paying directly day programs for people to go to day programs that they call employment, but they're really
Like sheltered workshops.
sheltered workshops. And so I have a real concern. This is, how long have we been getting this report? For like 3 years.
Mhm.
They continue and it continues to be the same regions. And I'm concerned of why are we pushing people? Is it that the LRS in the region is not doing, you know, what we would expect them to do? There's some regions that they are, or is it the committee at the LGEs or whatever, like that's where they're saying that people just need to go to a day program, like that's. Oh
Oh,
it's okay, it's fake. And
I wanted to tell you just as one example that I know about, like at Northwest Louisiana Human Services District, which is Shreveport Bossier, they've got 43 people going to vote. You know, which you're thinking, are they going to Frost Industries like a shelter workshop? But I just happened to have had a conversation with Sharon Doyle up there the other day, and that, like a huge percentage of those individuals are actually going to Barksdale Air Force Base. Frost Industries, the shelter workshop, has a contract with Barksdale Air Force Base. So we're paying Frost for that contract, but those individuals are working in competitive employment at Barksdale Air Force Base. So this is just one example of what looks like a bunch of people are just year after year working at shelter workshop. They're not. They're working competitively at Barksdale Air Force Base, and it's just paid for by individual family support funds.
so I guess our next question is, in all these areas that we see, that's just a very disproportionate amount, whether large or small. Can we get feedback from each of these LGEs to say what are they spending it on and why? Like to get that from Region 7 that you just said about the Barksdale. But actually, they're only doing 162,000. It's not a large percent. It's not disproportionate. The example you just gave. Is that a possibility? It seems like we're having this conversation every year, and it's the same conversation we have every year, and we never get any feedback, and they continue to do kind of the same things, I think.
Just can I ask a point of clarification about that? So, so how, like, you said for the, is there some sort of factor you want us to set to look at what disproportion is? Just trying to figure out who needs to respond to what? Is there some, because we actually did at the last DD director meeting, share this report with them and said, we're gonna be coming to the DD council meeting. And, you know, they usually look at this report and have lots of questions about it. Is there any information that y'all want to share with us to bring? And we had a couple of kind of database sort of issues, but we didn't. So I just want to make sure that if I'm bringing it back to say we need an answer to this, like how do I know who to ask for what? And I don't mean that I want us to have to go through every detail of the report, but if y'all just tell me, look at the percentages this way, and if there's something like that, so that I know how to ask them to direct who needs to give me feedback on like maybe why that's happening there or further information.
I mean, I've got little stars on my paper, and I did it kind of in my mind of, I
Okay.
didn't actually calculate it, but it was like close to 25% of your budget is going to a certain area, and most of them are like in PCA, vocational, this.
I think the highest three on the last list that does the state totals were the diapers, disposable undergarments, and incontinence supplies, the PCA, and vocational employment supports. And you look at how much they all spent, those are the top three, but then we have some LGEs that didn't spend any money in like vocational rehab for our area.
So you want us to focus on the PCA and the vocational? I'm happy to focus on incontinence supplies, but since we're adding that in October, I would expect that would change. I don't know that we
Yeah,
need to focus on that right now, but focus on
I see North Louisiana, Region 7. They have coded as in-home respite.
Yeah, they have a lot.
That's 326,000 of about $900,000. Oh, wait, 308, I'm sorry, something. So that's a large percentage of their budget. I don't, maybe that's a coding thing, maybe. But they also have 256, no, I'm sorry, 244 in PCA. So like, what's the difference?
Right, yes, I would,
So kind of piggybacking off of what Julie said, just because I'm trying to do your summary here, I'm still unclear of what the actual request for them to look at is. I know we're naming like there's a, PCA vocational sports, there's a large. What is it? Are you saying some regions spend a lot of money there, some don't, and why is that? Or
Yes, I would
is
say
that
the
essentially
two,
what?
yeah, so vocational,
Okay.
PCA, and then I have that respite, but that's really only North Louisiana that I see that the Region 7 that I see that there's that large number.
And then so
And if it's like,
finding out why they're spending so much here, not there, but
Central Louisiana also.
specifically looking at the like trying to see.
I would just want an explanation from them.
Because in the past, it's always been the needs in each region might be different. And so this region has more needs in this area than this region. So I'm trying to capture what exactly we're drilling down to so I can have it in your summary. So we'll know exactly what they're following up on at the next meeting. They're going to give us X, Y, and Z.
I have a question. Are we asking maybe for like how many clients are referred for certain services in each region or no?
No,
Just the money amount. We're looking for the money amount.
yeah, I hadn't looked at the number of people, but
I didn't know if we
Looking at the
wanted to
money.
try to like figure out, okay, how many people got vocational services? You get what I'm saying? Like if they
That
were
would be the
serving
number of
more
contracts,
people,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
no, I was looking at the money.
Okay.
But to tell which one, I mean, I have to do, like, what do you look at? I mean,
If it was broken down, like I said, like the other ones in percentage, we would be
Yeah.
able to see it a little clearer with all of the categories. Just from the money encumbered, from the money spent, they'll have a percentage of that already on there. Then you'll be able to look at it, okay, here's the disparity. You could just point it out quicker, right here, you gotta keep doing the math. You have to keep doing the math back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
So can I ask you a clarification on that? So do you want the percentages, like, so, like, looking at just like the table where it says contracts?
Mhm.
This is on here, so where it says contracts, you want, so if we spent 127, or there was 127 services, which percentage within Florida parishes? I'm trying to figure out if the percentage is a breakdown by Florida parishes on what
So-
were spent, or a
So let's take
breakdown.
this first one right here, the MHSD, right? And we have the encumbered amount, that's the amount that's allowed to them to spend, correct?
That's right.
Okay,
That's budgeted.
so if we take that number and we go by the number that's spent, we divide that, we should get a percentage.
no, that's not what that's not,
That's how
I'm
you-
looking at what was spent, because what's encumbered is just what they budgeted, but to me, what's important is what they actually spent.
Right, but we wouldn't be able to get like a real percentage off of that because of okay, as far as the contracts, you don't know exactly how much each contract is, right? Everybody is different according to whatever service they need or whatever their family is. They might have a family of 1 or a family of 6 or a family of 3, right? So the contract would be different. We wouldn't be able to get a specific, breakdown of, okay, if they spent that amount of money, then these people were served. We wouldn't be able to get that because they would really have to break it down even further than it already is, for us to get those numbers like that.
I think what she's saying is take on that one, the 1.2 million.
Mhm.
And then what percent of 1.2 million was spent on assisted devices and clothing? That was only 6,400. So instead of
So
the
we
money
take that,
amount, the
okay.
percent. And then you would see, well, they spent 10% on clothing and they spent 75% on this. You would be able to see
Right,
where the percentage
exactly.
is and then compare it from one.
One region to
Healthy.
another, and then you would ask, okay, well, guys, up in this specific one, because we have disparities up in the in-home respite. Well, what's really going on in these 2 regions that's not going on in the other regions? Because I can understand, the ones that was hit by the hurricane. I could get theirs, but the ones that wasn't hit by anything and wasn't affected by something, well, what's really going on over there?
I can tell you the difference between in-home respite and PCA. It's just a definition difference. I mean, in-home respite is basically rest for the caregiver, and PCA is assistance for the person with a disability.
Right,
So I think for Northwest Louisiana Human Services District, they just break up that definition and put some under in-home respite and some under PCA, whereas some of the other local governing entities might just put it all under PCA.
okay,
So it's just a definition difference, but the service is the same. It's still a direct service worker in there assisting the person with a disability.
okay.
So what I'm looking at is the total on the back. So of the total spent by all of the LGEs, say for vocational employment services, when it's 17.5% of all of the LGEs, their budget was spent on vocational and employment supports. So perhaps what we can say is if any of the LGEs have a 10% variance from what the average is, then they need to explain why, whether it be, they have 27.5% of their budget going to vocational, or 7.5% or less, then that would show that they're not in line with what the average is for the LGEs. Would that make sense to you guys? And then after you say that about the in-home respite, I really didn't pay that much attention to that one, except for the North Louisiana one. But, I mean, those are almost essentially kind of the same. I know there's some differences, so maybe do those two columns as a, you know, a total, add those up for the total, come up with the percentage, and then do the same thing for each individually. And if any of them have, or 10% more or 10% less than the average, then ask them for an explanation of what are they doing.
So you want to know why one LGE would be 10% above the average spending envelope, or why that LGE might be 10% below the average, depending on that.
10% or more, 10% less. Yeah.
And we're talking both PCA respite combined and,
Well, no, not vocational is one line item.
yeah,
And then,
both. And then PCA respite combined
mhm,
as number two.
yeah.
Both one, and then number two was PCA respite combined.
Mhm.
And
And
then,
those are the only areas I had concerns with. I mean, there are some that spend a lot on incontinence supplies, but like I said, that should be addressed. And so I didn't have any other areas. I don't know if anybody else saw any areas. That makes sense.
I didn't see any other areas. I just had just a concern with, central Louisiana from the hurricane, I guess. Are y'all saying that they're just not up and running again, or,
MCAL.
yeah, MCAL, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, they are. They're just still having, like, for example, the Human Services District is operating. They have a temporary physical location, but they've gotten money to help build something new. I don't know if you remember when Laura hit with Lake Charles, there's a big glass building and you saw all the glass. That's where the Human Services District and Authority offices were. And that building is still, I just was in Lake Charles a couple of weeks ago. It's still sitting sort of boarded up. So they had to physically move to a new location. So they're operating, they have their staff. They are our smallest region, but they're operating in some satellite offices, but they are having to work to sort of rebuild. Then we know, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this. I know a couple of the ARCs they're just still struggling to get, to have staff in the area. A lot of people moved out of the area.
Yeah.
A lot, again, their physical locations too. So I just know that's an area where they are. Again, they were smaller, so they had fewer, but then they also now are having even more trouble kind of getting back going.
Okay,
But
I was
they
just-
are up and running.
okay. I was just wondering, because, my area got hit by the hurricane really hard.
Home at Thibodeau.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Homerton really got hit really hard, and some of our stuff is still up and running or whatever, but I'm just surprised to see how far behind.
I think
They are.
Thibodeau expects it and is pre-prepared for stuff like that, where Lake Charles probably was not expecting what they got.
Okay,
I think
well, that
you
would,
guys are prepared for things like that, you know?
we always experience it.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, okay.
So. PCA, respite, and then vocational. You want to take from that total budget page. And if they 10 percentage points above, below, whatever that average is here, which was 17%. I think is what you said,
For the employment one.
for the employment,
Mhm,
and whatever it would be for the other one.
yeah.
The department will ask the LGE to explain why.
Yeah,
Because I would assume that's the request they got, right? That's the process, that you have a request for this, we honor it or we don't. So I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't know what information we're hoping to get back from that.
What question from that thing?
So what are they utilizing that for? So I'll give you an
So
example.
like the details of the contract, like this was for this, or this was is that?
I'm just curious.
I just want to make sure you guys get the info you're looking for
Yeah.
when they come back. And is this, you're trying to get this information for January, or is this information to include when this report happens again next October?
Oh, no, you meant the January.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have, got to get it out there at
Right.
our time, right? But
Yeah,
I just want to make sure
that's a good
Tanya and
point.
Julie have what they need.
Yeah, I mean, we can just explain to them, if okay, we can explain to them that during the DD council meeting, there was discussion in those two particular areas. And do they have anything specific to their region that might explain
Okay.
the difference? And if it's okay with the group, I would also like the opportunity to invite the DD director to come to the January meeting if they would like to, so that we're not just reading a report, but that they may be able to, they'll know more, to your point, Brett, and there's some things that are very regionally specific, so they may be able to provide more information. So I'd like an opportunity to invite them to participate as well, if that's all right with the committee.
So this report you would like back on the January agenda? Okay.
So Julie's recommendation, does that, you think that's?
Yeah, that's fine. So the summary is not gonna include all of these details. I just wanted enough where I can have a very clear statement that I can put in the summary of what you've asked them.
Yeah.
So I would
Appreciate
say
you
that's
bringing that up. Okay, does anybody else? Does that address everybody's concerns? Any other points y'all want to make about this report?
The only thing is, that information, I don't know if we could maybe share it with the LRC committee too. Anything we get back on employment, because I don't know, but I work with people with disabilities in employment, and there's always, okay, who pays for what? Can they pay for something that LRS doesn't pay for, and things like that? So maybe even if we could get some education out there on, or even not to the individual participants, but to the resource coordinators, what those funds can be used for. And if they are a participant of LRS, if they aren't getting all the services they need, or they've already been through LRS, what these funds could be used for. Could these funds go to a vendor that they've already been through with LRS and just do something like that? I don't know. I don't even know if that's an option. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing on the ground for, you know. But I think it would be good data to bring to LRS and say, hey, what's the connection here? They're both doing employment with people with developmental disabilities, so.
So when I sat on the individual and family support committees, if somebody asked for some kind of employment service, we would refer them to LRS
Right.
first, and see if they could assist an individual in getting a job or learning a skill or doing what they need to do. Sometimes LRS had no funds, and we would keep up with LRS to find out how it's done.
Okay.
If LRS didn't have any funds available, then we would do it. If the family specifically said, hey, I heard that these people are going, this individual is going and working at Barksdale, then, oh, well, we're the only one that has that contract. So LRS can't do that. So we would fund it. It's an individual family-based decision each time,
Okay.
and based on LRS's ability and funding.
And then all five are open now.
That's what I'm saying.
So that
That's not an
might
issue
be-
now. That should not be an issue.
So that might, maybe that's why that those funds are being used. I mean, I doubt it, but it could be. So I think that'll be good for information for us to get back.
So I think to your point, we could certainly bring in the LRS representative on the council and get, once we get the data and just if there's some ways to better coordinate, and then any data that the council has is public, and you can bring it to the LRC as well.
Right.
Yeah. And LRC is Louisiana
Rehabilitation
Council, I'm sorry. Okay, Renata.
I just kind of want to go back to what you stated earlier in regard, I'm still stuck on it. Telling them, I just think it's a vast difference between telling and educating. When you're telling someone something, you're just sharing information, but when you're educating them, we're imparting knowledge and understanding of whatever you're speaking of. It involves discussion for them to gain understanding. So I just kind of think that if you all's mindset is just, I can't tell. I think that word needs to be changed to more so educating that individual. Because, can I
I probably
finish?
misled you.
Can I finish?
Oh, my bad.
I think that you guys just consider just these, they may not know or understand or know what's out there. So I don't, does that make sense?
Yes.
So I don't want to describe to you something that makes it come across as if we just sit there in silence in a meeting and then we don't give the family anything unless they tell us, we have planning meetings with families and we talk about all of the services, we talk about what the family needs, it's a meeting that does cover all the stuff that you're talking about. There are lots and lots of families that have absolutely no idea what we offer. And so, we don't say, hey, they didn't ask for it, so they don't get it. The community support professionals are professionals at what's available and they assess the family's needs and they will suggest things if the family's, but it's like, what does the family need? And the family is going to come to us and say, this is the situation. I need to work, but I can't because I have to stay home, or my child is getting in trouble at school. And so I keep having to leave work. They're not telling us I need PCA or I need respite, or they're not using the phrases. They're telling us what the family situation is. And then our community support professional says, hey, these are the things that we can do to help alleviate this issue you're telling us that you need help with. So we are educating them, but we're also just tailoring our services to meet the needs of each individual family. Because we just don't want families to come in and think, I have this very specific need, but I can't get it from them because this is all they do.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make it specific for you it's not like we keep it a secret. We just don't want to provide somebody a menu and say, this is all we do. It's just how can your life be enhanced? How can your life be improved? How can we make, things better or different for your family? And then we just pour it in there, what can we do to help?
Well, thank you so much. That's much more clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying.
And I get that, because sometimes I get calls where people will say, oh, I want to get disability. But they're saying Social Security, and
Right.
and then I have a conversation because that few $100s a month is not what they need. They need a waiver, or they need, like, they have a severe situation and they don't even realize how bad it is. And they don't know anything else except what they've heard from whatever their community is that people get, Social Security disability.
And I found families that have children that have the most severe disability invariably come in and say, well, we don't need anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you could have flexible family fund. You can do this, we can do this. And their families are like, oh, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does we have any more questions or comments about this report? Okay. So we'll move on to the.
Quite fresh eyes. Quarter 1. Fiscal year 24. So I just want to remind everybody that this report is a month early, so it's not a full picture of quarter 1 because it's missing a lot of invoices that would be coming in. A lot of September's invoices aren't going to be coming in until after this report was due. So although we would normally look for 25%, some of these are going to be much less than that because they received all of their quarter 1 invoices. Yeah.
Oh.
So sometimes I'm not even sure where to send your eyes because it's just the information from quarter 1. You've got Acadiana that spent 20%. And it looks like Central Louisiana at 11. That's the span. Average of 15% has been spent, but that's missing September. invoices. The flexible family fund is a lot easier to project because that $258 goes out every month without fail. So, they're at 25%. Any questions about Q1 individual family support and flexible family fund? And so then Act 73 for Q1. Statewide total 21% has been spent. I would encourage you guys to look at the fiscal year 23 final Act 73 and the Q1 and look at the total LGE state general fund column. And then you will see the difference in the amount of money that each LGE has been given as their state general fund account. And that way you'll know what some of the LGEs are facing changes, some a little bit more money, some a little bit less. So the 9% that they're required to spend is different.
So, looking at this, like metropolitan, capital area, I'll call it region 1, region 2, region 4. They all receive less state general funds.
That's correct.
But like through the year, sometimes they will get more monies. So we see that added in sometimes. Do you see that budget change? So looking at the fiscal year 23, region 3, 4, 5, and 6 all had money added to their budget throughout the fiscal year of 23.
That money was not additional state general funds. That was additional money that the LGE itself administration decided from their state general funds to put more towards that program.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
And in this first report, I do generally just like to make sure that the LGEs have all budgeted at least equal to the 9%. So they're starting out on the right foot at the Q1 and fiscal year 24.
It's like they all.
Yep, they're all, I think they've all
have.
budgeted
Yeah. It's done at
equal
least.
to or more.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't have to reach out to anybody and say, hey, you need to give us more money for a program still. That's good. That's a good start.
Any other questions for Tanya, CDD? Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Next, we'll have our report from the Office of Aging and Adult Services, the ARC of Louisiana.
Okay. Now ready?
Looks like this.
Okay, so this quarter we were able to serve 42 people, a little bit less than last quarter. But last quarter we had, we served 57 people, but we also had some extra funds, unused funds. And so we were able to do some like one-time things, home modifications and a couple of other things. So of those 42 people, which is typical, amount of people to serve on this contract. 20 of those, I'm sorry, not 20, 15 of those were African-Americans, 26 were Caucasian, and 1 was Hispanic. Those were 27 of those people were males and 15 were females. The ranges of the ages now from 30 to 91. Before it was, last year it was 20 to 91. So we had a couple of changes this contract year. And you'll see that when you look at the next page of the regions and the difference in the regions. So the biggest change was in region 2, where we were serving 13 people last year and now 8. But if you look at the amounts, it's, 6 in region 1, 8 in region 2, 3 in region 3, no people in Region 4, 4 in Region 5, 2 in Region 6, 10 in Region 7, no one in Region 8, and then 9 in Region 9. So Region 7 is serving the most people at this time, which is always the case, because I think that's like where this PAWS program actually originated, was like those people in Region 7. So of those services, everyone, of course, is receiving support coordination. 37 of them are receiving personal care assistance. 3 are either getting some type of rental assistance or utility assistance. 2 are getting medical supplies and equipment. That's what probably the biggest difference. Last year, there were 15 people receiving that. And then no one this year so far received any type of like home modifications or vehicle modification. Below that, you'll see that the total amount expended was 1,600. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so 165,85,53. And then the breakdown is right above that. And of course, in the next table, you can see the percentages of those funds and how that took place. So right below that is something that you guys had asked for last time. This was not an easy task. So I hope this is the way you wanted it. We had to call a lot of people. Now it's not completed though, because we were not able to get in touch with everyone. We got a lot of like disconnected phone calls, disconnected numbers and different things like that. And then some people didn't call us back. So we did send them letters, but we did the best we could to get the demographics on the waiting list like you asked. So there are currently right now 89 people on the waiting list. So that went up, I think by like 12 people, because I think we had like 77 last year. So it went up a little bit. And so in Region 1, there's 21 people on the waiting list. On Region 2, there's 20. Region 3, there's 7. Region 4, there's 16. Region 5, there's 2. Region 6, there's 1. Region 7, there's 5. Region 8, there's 2. And Region 9, there's 15. If you turn the page, you'll see that breakdown as far as the race and the gender. Like I said, there's now 89 people on the waiting list. And then if you turn the page, it'll have like what they're requesting. So ECA services, it went up a little bit. It was 63, now it's 74. Home modifications, there's 11 people waiting for that. Medical equipment and supplies is 27. Rental assistance or utility is just 1. Some people are requesting more than one thing, so you'll notice that the numbers are kind of off or whatever, but some people are requesting more than one. This was the part that you guys, the new information that you guys requested. And it was to find out what people were already receiving and if they were receiving other things. So I'm hoping this is the way y'all wanted it. So LTPCS, there are 4 people who are currently receiving that and 1 who've applied for it. On the CCW, 10 people are currently receiving it and 23 have applied for that service. On the Now waiver, there's 6 people who are currently receiving and 6 more additional people who have applied for it. The Traumatic Head and Spinal Cord Injury Fund, there are 14 people who are receiving it and 4 who have applied. The Row, there was 1 and no, they have not applied. No other people have applied for it. And then the Supports Waiver or the PACE, 1 person applied and no, 1 person's receiving it and no one has applied. So there are 4 applicants of that 89 who don't qualify for any other service. And 19 of the applicants we were unable to get the information for. So there was no reply. And that is it. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything. Okay.
What does LTPCS?
I'm sorry, long-term personal care services.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot about the no alphabets.
And Kelly, when people apply for long-term personal care services and the community choice waiver, they apply for both. So why is it a difference? Like when you call the hotline, you get in the system.
No, you don't get both unless you request it. You gotta say which one you want. I tell them to apply for both. But if we don't tell them and someone answers the phone, they'll say like, what are you applying for? And they'll say, oh, long-term personal care or CCW. At least when I've called for families, that's how it is.
So the 23 that you say are on the community choice waivers,
That applied for it?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Traumatic.
If they're on the waiting list, but so none of them are qualified for Medicaid.
Well, we don't know. They
Applied for the service?
but I don't know if they don't have an answer just yet. Like when they call and I said, do you receive any of the services? And they'll say no. And I'm like, have you applied for any other ones? And some of them, we tell them, hey, call this number and apply for a CCW, apply for long-term personal care. Some of them say, oh, well, we applied for the waiver. I said, which one? And they'll say, oh, the one through Office of Aging. Okay, so you applied for the CCW? Yes. So I'm like, are you on the waiting list? I don't know. So most people, I mean, the only other way to figure that out is to, and I guess we could, but was just a lot going on to bump up their social security numbers up against OAS's list to see, but
You could send it, we could do that too.
Okay,
yeah, we could
So this
do
is
that.
self-reported information.
yes, this is all self-reported information. This is not,
Because I thought when you called to get on, get long-term personal care service or community choice waiver, if you were Medicaid eligible, you already getting Medicaid, then they would check to, then see if you meet the disability requirements to get long-term personal care services.
when I've applied for services like with a family,
They specifically ask, are you applying for the waiver? Or are you applying for long-term personal care?
Ah. I mean, that doesn't make sense that Medicaid wouldn't say you're calling for these services, you are Medicaid eligible, therefore you would be able to see first off if you get long-term personal care. And I just say, I don't know, maybe we should ask that question to Office of Aging tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
what I'm saying
people-
makes sense.
And people respond to it
that way too, because they'll say, oh, I've applied
for
for,
LTPCS or I applied for community choices waiver.
And I get what people are saying, like they might just not even know what it is that they've done, but I'm concerned that if you call that number and someone's calling that they need services and they say, I want community choice waiver, that they don't
Well-
look at people and say, oh, you're Medicaid eligible. So long-term, that's a state plan, they could get it if they're qualified, like the people that
Well,
answer.
when you call OCDD, like when you call to apply for a waiver with OCDD services, do you say, I want to apply for the now or the supports waiver, or do you just apply for one and then
It's different,
Okay.
completely different, yeah, because they have like
Okay.
a contract that you would call in.
Okay,
And I don't know how it works. I can tell you that there is a federal requirement that we attempt to get state plan services, and we must use state plan services before we enact waiver services. In fact, if you have something, like we have to explain a lot of times why, what's the difference in LTPCS versus the personal care type services you get in waiver, because you can't have duplication of state plan and waiver services,
Right.
and you must do that first. So that's why a lot of times when we talk about, families a lot of times get frustrated, and I can only speak on our end when we say, well, we have to try EPSDT personal care or long-term personal care before waiver because we're mandated to use state plan first. So I don't, it would seem like they would look at that, but I can't answer for the K question or for the OAAS, how that works. But Mindy should be able to explain it if she's able to come tomorrow, because I know that they have a script that I have seen. I just haven't seen it in a long time for what they're supposed to say when they answer the phone, when people are calling to apply.
Is that
Well,
something?
perhaps there's no waiting list for long-term personal care
To
services.
update?
There is
not.
a community
Well,
choice,
there
right?
can't be.
Yeah.
Right,
You
it's
can't
state
have
plan.
waiting lists.
Yeah.
for
So you've got the
state
23 people on the waiting list, but the reason that they aren't also is because they don't realize it's also receiving it or, there's no waiting list, so they wouldn't be on hold.
plan. Well, there's no waiting list if you meet medical necessity.
Right.
But you
Yeah.
do have to go through the medical necessity criteria.
Yeah. Okay. And then for the now, you say there's 6 people who, they applied, so they're in the process of getting the screening?
Yeah, they applied for the services, so I think they're in the process of
Determining eligibility.
And so that would mean if they got it now, they wouldn't need the SPAS program.
Well, it depends on what they're looking for. If they're looking for something else like home modifications or medical assistance and equipment, we would do that, but we can't supplant any other services that are already being received.
But wouldn't the now pay for that?
If the now is not paying for it and they refuse to pay for it or whatever, then we could pick up.
Right.
Yeah. But a lot of families, they go out and they apply for everything that they can and whatever they could get first, and so
You're gonna see some overlap in some of this, but that's just
because they're looking for something and which one's gonna be able to meet their needs first,
yeah.
Any other questions?
That means we're providing services for 42 people. Is that this group of people?
No, that is in the beginning of the report. These are just the waiting list people. Yeah. But know that if we're serving people right now and they're receiving PCA, they're not receiving PCA services with any of these. Yeah.
Any other questions? Kelly? Okay. The next item is our Office of Behavioral Health, Dr. Savicki.
Hello. All right, so let's talk first about the year-end report for the fiscal year that just ended. And it feels like it just ended. I guess it's been 2 months. So this would be fiscal year 23. I wanted to point out a couple of things. One is going even all the way backwards to the previous fiscal year. From fiscal year 22, we had a couple of LGEs on corrective action plans based on fiscal year 22. And I just wanted to make a note to everybody that based on this sort of year-end report for fiscal year 23, both of those corrective action plans were successful, essentially, that the LGEs were able to this past year kind of get back up to where they needed to be in terms of their meeting those performance thresholds that we set. So just wanted to make a note of that. Metropolitan had in fiscal year 22 had some barriers in terms of getting all of their community care resources funds out. And you can see at the they expended 100% of their funds this past fiscal year. So I wanted to look into that. And then at the end of fiscal year 22, North Louisiana was having a hard time getting through their waiting lists of flexible family funds. And they were having a hard time filling some of their slots at the end of that fiscal year 22. They worked through the issues they were having and they're back, getting those slots filled, more consistently now. So just wanted to make a note of that. In terms of fiscal year 23, a couple things to note just in terms of, as Daniel noted, this is everything, right? So we're no longer saying that we're missing invoices. This is all of it. Just to note a couple of areas of concern. One is Florida parishes, which did not expend. So our target threshold is that we want to see the LGEs expend 95% of their allocated CCR funds by the end of the year. Florida parishes did not. So we have requested a corrective action plan from Florida parishes. And they've requested that within the last couple of weeks. So they'll be getting that too. So we give them 30 days to give us that corrective action plan. We can potentially, after we consult with them, we can bring the the council up to speed at the next quarterly meeting about what they're trying, what are their efforts entail in terms of getting more of those funds out this fiscal year. There is one, let's see, it's Northeast, that looks like they would need a correction action plan, and I'm going to tell you why they don't, which is that, so they have, they're showing, I think, 86% of their funds expended by the end of the year. I just wanted to let you all know that the only reason for that is they actually added additional funds, I think in that last quarter of the year, which to my mind is a great thing in terms of their, they're recognizing some additional in their community. They're throwing, some additional funds in this fund, and they just didn't expend all of those by the end of the year. So they did expend, oh, shoot, I don't have the percentage. Oh, here it is. They expended 98% of their original allocation. So all that is to say, we don't feel the need for a corrective action plan based on that. That's just them sort of being responsive to community needs. And I think those were the two areas of, one area of actual concern, one that we don't find concerning. I will note also that South Central, it looks like a concern on the report in terms of the number of filled slots, but that's actually just a reporting area that we didn't get a chance to get the response back and get that fixed by the time we submitted the report. But they're actually fine in terms of their filled slots. So those are all the things that I wanted to make note of in the year-end report for this fiscal year that just ended. Any questions on that before I move on to this year? Yeah.
What were the marble notebooks for?
The what? I'm sorry.
They, in South Central, they ordered almost $7,000 of marble composition books.
So these are, LG administered program. They report to us. We report out to the meeting council. That would need to be a question for them. I do know that sometimes LGs do report on getting supplies for instance, summer camps that are related to, or summer programs, after school activities that they do with kids with behavioral health needs that they're serving. So that would be my guess, but that question would have to go to South Central.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So you're saying the question has to go to South Central, but she's asking it to you. Will you be able to ask that to them?
Do if that's a request.
I mean, that's about
I said, I'm a teacher.
17,000.
That's a lot. That's a lot of,
Yeah.
yeah. They 50 cents, $1 at the most.
Probably
Yeah.
They don't
That's a
say.
lot of money.
Yeah, they don't sell right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
The classrooms, don't they, I mean, a lot of.
I mean,
them-
unless they sponsor some schools.
Yeah, most
That's
of
what
them
I'm
use
saying.
Chromebooks now.
Like unless they sponsor some school.
It has to be.
Oh,
a
But still, that's a lot.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah,
We can ask for clarification on it.
yeah. Also in Acadiana, they said gift cards. Were those gift cards like, which generic, like just given to the parents, or what were they for?
So again, we have to
Okay.
ask for clarification from them.
All right, and then they have driver's ed. Does every parish or every LGE offer driver's ed for some of these children?
Every LGE is different, so I'm sure that there's different decisions made on LGEs about what programs that they're funding and kind of how they're trying to meet the need of kids with behavioral health needs in their.
Yes.
They have like gift, yeah.
I mean, the driver's education, I would imagine that,
I'm saying because not many, well, for instance, I didn't know certain things.
Wow.
You didn't know certain things because we didn't know what was available. And we've, been doing this a while, but if we don't know what's available, we don't know what to ask.
So these are based on asks, right? I mean, the Consumer Care Resources Fund is based on a family asking
Okay,
the LGE, this is something we need in order to, successfully support our child with, emotional needs in the home. And we can't find another way to fund that. Can you fund that with the Act 378 funds? So that's likely what happened here is that their family went to their LGE and said, hey, this is something we need. We can't fund it. Can this be supported as a way of, successfly helping our youth and, stay in the home? So that would be my best guess
okay.
for why there's because Acadiana has a long list of things here. That these are likely some things that they're doing as an agency. They may be hosting an event for kids that they're serving, or it may be individual family needs who are requesting, can I get some support to to fund this need that I have in my family.
Can I just interject something for just clarity, if you don't mind? Because this took me several years to get my mind straight around it. What she's talking about is Office of Behavioral Health, which not all of these kids have developmental disabilities.
Right.
You can have an overlap, but so some of these are different, as well as with Kelly's report. Some of the people that she served are people with developmental disabilities and some of the people are not. So just.
Yeah, these are specifically, these are funds that are used by the behavioral health team and staff at the Human Services District. And kids and families are eligible for these supports based on their behavioral health needs. So they they may also have a developmental disability, but possibly not. I mean, they're going to the sort of behavioral health staff at the Human Services District for, therapy, for medication management, for, those kinds of services, and also saying, hey, and also I have this need, can you help? Can you use these Act 378 funds to help my family address that need? Thanks for that, Pam. It's a good thing to point out.
So for instance, like for the driver's education, you can have a kid that's getting treatment or that type of thing, and you know that that's going to help build their self-esteem or help something else, and that's going to help them with their behavioral health need. So I think that's how I interpret some of these things.
So thank you for the clarification. That makes
Yeah.
a lot of difference.
I went years making the my brain.
We just are opening a little bit, the door is opening, so. Thank you.
Any other questions on that report?
I do have one question. So you're saying that it may or may not be for a child with disabilities, right?
Yeah,
That
these
the
funding, this
funds are
funding,
used for-
this report is all data reported by the behavioral health staff of the Human Services District. And
Right.
it's based on funding that is for kids who qualify based on their behavioral health needs.
So it may or may not be a child with disabilities.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, kids with developmental disabilities will be working with the DD staff. And so that would probably, they would more likely, I would think, would more likely request support from the DD side. And so that would show up on the reports that Tanya has gone through. There certainly could be families that are accessing supports from both sides, which is fine and appropriate, based on their needs. But these are most likely to be kids who are just kind of there and getting services based on their behavioral health needs.
Okay, because I guess my little brain just went off up in my head. Okay, we have Act 378 that was specifically for children with disabilities. But if the funds that we're using are just going to someone that they don't even fall underneath the act.
So there's a long history there, way before my time. But my understanding is that back in the 90s, I don't know if folks with more history can maybe speak to that more, that back when the act was created, that there was some reference in terms of the planning committee that somebody please help me here, because this is way beyond my scope or history. But there was the folks advocating for this funding for folks with developmental disabilities also at the same time advocated for some funding to be allocated for folks with behavioral health needs. That's my, Brendan.
Yeah,
help me.
it is a part of that. MD funds.
Okay.
Point of no event, but is that the whole point of this committee is to discuss DD and also behavioral needs?
Yeah, so this committee is designed to monitor the Act 378 programs. And that
Right.
includes programs on the developmental disability side. It also includes programs under behavioral health, these specific programs. Because that's the council's charge as a part of the community and family support system plan. We're supposed to monitor it. We're supposed to monitor these Act 378 funds and programs. So that's why you discussed both at this meeting. The only thing that we don't discuss and that we don't talk about waivers in this particular meeting, because we discuss more of that in self-determination. So we look at, and we discuss in self-determination, families helping families, which was also a part of the community and family support system plan. But here we talk about these particular programs
Okay,
So it's common to be discussing OBH or behavioral health and developmental disability. If that answers your question.
And in terms of these funds, it is a significantly smaller amount on the behavioral health side. I think the last time I looked at it, it was about a third, I think, sort of statewide of the, so it is a smaller amount that is sort of allocated for use by the behavioral health side of the Human Services District, but there are these amounts that can be used by the
Okay.
behavioral health services staff. Just the kind of thing that's being described, that they're, seeing a kid in a family in treatment and realizing, family realizes, the staff realizes, hey, there's this additional thing that if the family could pay for, that would really help
That will help. them.
with their behavioral health needs, and that, these funds are available to help with that kind of thing.
Okay.
But also just throw it out there. And if you want to know more about the history of Act 378, certainly we have information here, but here, as part of our Families Helping Families contracts, they do trainings on Act 378 for us. And so if you're signed up for their listserv, they push out information about when they host trainings and stuff. And a lot of trainings are webinars, so you can do them at home or at work or whatever. I would say when they have an Act 378 training, just participate in those. It's usually a lot of great history of kind of how it started and what's it about.
I was
It would be
thinking the
helpful.
same thing, but I'm wondering, Brenton, could we get the Families Helping Families, like, to let you know, and then you send it out to our committee members when they have them?
Yeah, we can do that.
And then we can join in whenever we have that opportunity. Thank you, Brenton. One more thing on your to-do list. Okay, any other questions for Dr. Savicki on, is it the behavioral health support for fiscal year ending 23? And that's the children and adolescent report. Okay?
Yeah, and the adult one, so, sorry, I don't think I even got the adult one. But yeah, the adult one, no concerns on the adult one, essentially, that the LGs that administer the funds for adults, had, spent all their funding or very close to. But yeah, I can jump into the current fiscal year Q1 report, if that's okay.
Yep.
So this one, there's not a ton to say about it at this point, because again, this, it's supposedly for Q1, but based on the time that LGs need to submit the report in time for this meeting, it doesn't include all the invoices for Q1. So we hardly ever see, what you want to see at the end of Q1 is about a quarter of the fund expended. We never do, for a variety of reasons, partly because they haven't actually processed 3 months of invoices yet. Also, there are a couple LGEs that use a federal funding source first, as is required. And so they can save their Act 378 funds to use later in the year. There are also several LGEs that specifically save some funds towards the end of the fiscal year to support families kind of early in the summer, really helping families with, for instance, summer camp fees. So, the percentage expended shown on the Q1, there's not a whole lot we can take from that, because it's going to change significantly over the year. One thing we do look at when we look at the Q1 report for a new fiscal year, we look at what LGEs have done in terms of how much money they've allocated. Because we're interested to see if LGEs are choosing to keep the same level of funding in the program, increase it or decrease it. It is more or less the same. There's, a few digits different here and there. I mean, I can't remember. I think there was an LGE or two that, changed it by a couple $100 or something like that, but it's more or less the same. So just wanted to point that out to the DD Council, that the LGEs are choosing to, keep the same amount of funding in the program. And are more or less having, I believe they have all of their, everybody has all of their slots filled, which is, well, okay, we've got one LG that has one that they're working to fill, but they're doing pretty well as of this quarter report in getting those, kind of getting through wait lists and filling slots when they become, because, certainly kids age out or they move out of state, and then they have to go through their waiting list and find the next family that's eligible. And I think that's all I wanted to note on the Q1 report. Let me know if there's questions.
Being no questions, that'll end the report for the Office of Behavioral Health. Thank you. Any announcements?
Did we cover the adult?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know where I would have gone. I'm sorry. I was just typing up little things. I missed 2 reports. Okay. Announcements wise, just after this, members will break for lunch, and then at 1 in this room, we will have self-determination. At 3 o'clock in this room as well, we'll have our Education and Employment Committee, and then tomorrow at 8:30 in this room, will be the full council meeting. And you can adjourn by unanimous consent, as long as everyone agrees.
Agrees, thank you.
Is anyone else?
You can leave your stuff.